Well, hey, everybody, man, welcome to Highlands this weekend. We're so glad you're here, no matter where you are. Maybe you're in your living room, on vacation. We have people all over the world that are actually joining with us during our Loved One series. They're doing this in Pakistan. They're doing this over in some of our churches in South Africa. It's pretty crazy what God is able to do. Not only are we loving on our communities here, Pastor Georges in the Ivory Coast, so many of our partners around the world are also loving on their communities while we do it here. So it's pretty cool. So we started off last week. We kicked off our Loved One series. Now, I told you last week, if you were here, that I love this series. We culminate next week. It starts with Love Week, 23rd through the 29th. And it's just an incredible week that we move outside the walls of our church and we have opportunities after opportunities after opportunities for you to get out of your seat and to go out and serve and love one and love on your community. So here's some good news. We kicked it off last week, and we've been doing this now for a few years, and here's where we are. Our goal is 2,000 hours. We want to give back 2,000 hours during Love Week, 23rd through 29th, and we asked you to sign up last week. You go to our website, you go to hf.church/hub, and then you see at every location, you see all these opportunities. And if something isn't there that floats your boat, hey, and you're in a small group or you're in a neighborhood, then you pick something that serves your neighborhood or serves your workplace or your community and just let us know and we'll sign you up. You'll get the t-shirt. It'll be fun. But this is cool. We had 335 people sign up within the first day. Now, if we just took those 335, we're almost half there. I mean, this is 837 hours, a 2.5-hour project that we ask you to sort of commit to. So, hey, we need the rest of you to sign up. We could exceed this goal of 2,000 hours, which would be incredible. But if you didn't sign up last week, we still have many opportunities. I'm going to encourage you all sermon long today to sign up. And I want to sort of encourage you to understand why we do what we do. We looked at this a little bit last week, and we said the reason we do projects like Love Week and series like Love One is because it keeps our church from focusing inward. And all of us know in the Christian faith, if you're in a local church, that the death knell of a local church is when it becomes all about us, right? When we forget the mission as the reason the church exists to help people experience life with Jesus. Jesus came to seek and save those that were lost. And we make his church all about serving us and our families and what makes us feel good. And we know when that happens that we are headed for decline. And if we don't change that to get on the mission of Jesus, eventually the local church will die. And that's the reason we looked at last week. About 75% of our churches in North America are plateaued, are in decline. And Tom Rainer says the number one reason for that is because churches have turned inward. It's become all about themselves. Now, why are we doing this? Well, we're going out not because we're good people. And I want you to understand this. I don't want you to think that here at Highlands, we're the spiritually elite, that we've got it all together, and we're going to go out because we have arrived and serve on our community. If you go with that attitude, stay at the house, okay? But if you go knowing, and this is who Highlands is made up of, broken people who are in dire need of God's grace. All of us are in desperate need of Jesus every day because we're not good people. The Bible says there are no good people, right? Jesus was the only perfect person. The rest of us are all sinners. And we know if we're a part of this church that we've been redeemed by what Jesus Christ did on the cross, nothing that we did in and of ourselves. So we're not going out serving our community to be an example of spiritual elitism that we've got it all together and you need to be like us. No, we're going out as broken people who have been redeemed by the grace of Jesus Christ. We're not good people, we're God's people. And that's the reason we desire to serve our local communities. We've been radically changed by a loving God when we profess that we're his forgiven kids, and we desire to follow him, and we desire to do what he calls us to do. And this is what he calls us to do, to give up our consumer seat, all right? It's good to know the Word of God. We want you to come to church, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, he wants you to put your faith into action. And so we try to nudge you out of the seat and get on the team and go out and serve and love our communities. Well, I'm a State Farm guy. That's the only insurance company that was willing to insure me year after year after year after year with all my infractions against my insurance company, but they've been great. And you may have another insurance company that's been great to you, but that little slogan, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've been there for me. About my rep, just when I had my evaluation for this year, because we always get evaluated if they're going to do it again for us, and they've been there for us, I want to say 44 times. So they really have owned up to what we have asked them to be for us. And I thought, it's sort of corny, like a good neighbor, State Farm's there. But wouldn't it be cool if we could change it, especially during Love Week, to say, like a good neighbor, Highlands Fellowship is there. We want to be a good neighbor. We want our communities to see our church for them. We want our communities to excel, to get better. We want to help them get better, because when communities get better, we know everybody wins. Just like when the church gets better, man, we all win. Now, the truth is that when we talk about neighbors, Jesus had a very different definition of neighbor than we do. When I say neighbor, in the States, we automatically think of the person who lives across the street or field over, those people who live in our subdivision with us. That's who we think our neighbors are. I mean, in a region like Southwest Virginia, do you guys up in Bluefield consider that you have neighbors in Bristol? Well, probably not. Are you guys in Bristol, do you think you have neighbors in Marion? People who live in Abingdon, would you consider that you have neighbors in Johnson City? Well, most of us don't think about neighbors that way. And what about those of us who live in these nice, subdivisions or these nice little communities? Do we think that we actually have neighbors that are living in more deprived neighborhoods on the other side, maybe of our city or our town? We often call it across the tracks, so to speak. Do we see those folks as our neighbors? Well, Jesus wants to help us here. And I love Jesus just makes things very, very clear. He teaches in incredible ways, but it's simple enough for all of us to understand. He tells a story, and I've preached on this story. If you've been coming to Highlands, I've preached on this story a bunch. But when I was preparing for the Love One series, I really sensed as I was praying about what to share with you, this story came back across my mind, and I want to take it with a new twist today to help you understand who truly is our neighbor. This question has been asked for a long, long time. We know the story is the Good Samaritan, but it's basically about a guy who gets mugged and nobody stops to help him. But let's look at the actual story. Find it in Luke chapter 10. Jesus tells this story, and this is a story. He says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. This is a lawyer. And teacher, Jesus, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? So he started out right. He had the right question. What do I need to do to go to heaven when I die? And so Jesus says, what is written in the law? How do you read it? And the guy answers, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, you've answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you'll live. But he wanted to justify himself. You know how sometimes lawyers can be. He wanted to dig down a little deeper. So he asked Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? And that's what I want you to think about today. And I want to try to help you understand that Jesus sees this definition of neighbor a lot differently than we do, especially here in the States. So in reply, Jesus tells a story. He says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes. They beat him and went away. They left him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, catch this, he passed by, or the literal Greek word there is he stepped over. So not only did he pass by, he actually stepped over the guy on the other side. So a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, same word again, passed by or stepped over to the other side. But a Samaritan, now you know this because I've taught on it several times before, but Samaritans were enemies of the Jewish people, okay? They were, if you have an enemy, think of your worst enemy. And this is how the Jews thought of Samaritans. They were enemies. So a Samaritan, it's interesting who Jesus uses here. As he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him, and he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. This was healing. Oil and wine in those days would be like antiseptic to a wound today. And then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, took care of him. Next day, he took out 2 denarii, and he gave them to the innkeeper. And he says to the innkeeper, now look after him, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for any extra expense that you have. Which of these 3, Jesus says, do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell among robbers? Now this is an easy ask from Jesus, right? And the lawyer is no dummy. So the expert in the law replies, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus said, then go and do likewise. So with that story in mind, right now in Southwest Virginia, you know, when you think about our region, I've been here my entire life. Right now, when you think about Southwest Virginia, there are a lot of people that can identify with this guy who got mugged and beaten and left to be half dead on the side of the street. We have a lot of people in our culture right now who feel bruised and battered and forgotten all across Southwest Virginia, actually. And I've often thought, well, why is that? Why do we continue to see homelessness in our area rise, addiction, begin to creep up again? Why are we seeing these things that have plagued Southwest Virginia for a long, long time? Why do we continue to see these things increase? And I begin to think about where we've been over the last several years, and let's just think about this. Just look at this. Over the last few years, our region, honestly, guys, we've taken a beating. We've witnessed a cultural change with our economy that was pretty heavily reliant on the coal industry for years and years and years, and that's no longer the case. Thousands of those jobs have been lost. And then, it's still fresh on our mind. We encountered the COVID pandemic that took us out for a couple of years and stressed us out and caused so much division and anger and anxiety and craziness. And today, we're all facing high inflation where our money, our currency is almost devalued to certain ways, and it's just really hard to get ahead. Even if both mom and dad are working, even with 2-parent incomes, it's still pretty tough. And those of you that are grandparents and you're raising grandkids, or you're a single mom or a single dad and you're out there in the mix trying to keep your family together, I mean, you have told me and you have shared, it's tough. We get that, man. I know you're struggling. Some of our communities have gone through repeated credit downgrades. And when a city goes through a downgrade in its credit, then what happens is that's passed on to the city inhabitants, and so your services are increased. The things that the city did cheaper at one time, now you're paying more for services, and those things come out of your pocket. It's already stretched. And if you think about Southwest Virginia, we have had more schools consolidated in Southwest Virginia and proposed to consolidate over the next 10 years than 38 other states in our union. It's pretty incredible, all the things that our region has been through. And when I read these stories, it can often cause discouragement, and it breaks my heart, honestly, because I am from here. I love this. I would rather live in Southwest Virginia, any place in the world. And I've had opportunities, just like you. Many of you have had opportunities to go somewhere else, but I love it here. I fit here for some reason. I guess because I am one, but I'm proud of the heritage of who we are. And when I go to Bluefield, or when I go to our Marion location, or Bristol, or here in Abingdon, every time I'm around people like me. Now, if you've moved into the area, we welcome you, and we're so glad you're here. And we believe that God's bringing you here to encourage us and to build and to change and be innovative and help our whole region get better. So I'm so thankful for our region, but at the same time, I know a lot of you are hurting. A lot of you are discouraged. We sort of have a mantra at our church that obviously we can't change the lives of every person, but we believe we want to do for one what we would like to do for everybody. And so we know we can't solve everybody's issues, but man, if we can help one person, if you can help one person, if your family can help one other family, and that's the reason this Love One series is really powerful, because it actually puts the action back into your life and into your family. And we ask you, hey, take some time out of your schedule and love on a neighbor. Love on somebody who may be discouraged, that you can be used of God to be an encouragement to them. When we look at our neighborhoods and we see greater needs of those neighbors around us, we truly have a choice to make, don't we? And the choice is, are we going to get involved, or will we be like the priest and the Levite and pass by or just step over? I often think, what would this story be like today if Jesus were telling the story today? And I may offend you by a couple of ways I think about this story. And if I do, just email me. You're good at that anyway. But I think it could read something like this in this first part. A man was going down from Marion to Bristol when he had a flat tire on I-81, and he had to pull over. And two men from New Jersey. Now, if you're from New Jersey, hey, I'm sorry. They stopped. And instead of helping him, they actually attacked him, stripped him of his Nikes, beat him half to death, stole his pickup truck, and left him half dead. I think I can relate to a story like that a little bit better than I can relate to the story that Jesus tells in his time, in his social setting. Now, if we go back to Jesus' story, he tells about this guy that gets jumped basically by this gang of people. And lucky for him, he's thinking, all right, I'm here half dead, naked over here in the ditch. But thank goodness, some church leaders are coming by. And the church leaders come by, and he's thinking from the ditch, he can't get up and help himself. Finally got some help coming. Well, they look at him, and instead of helping him, they pass by. They step over him and go on their way. They leave this guy half dead until Jesus, he brings the most unlikely candidate of anybody, right? I mean, the Samaritan. And the Samaritan stops. He's as busy as the church folks, right? And he goes over and he gives this fellow who's been mobbed and beaten what he so desperately needs. He gives him love. He offers him love. Not pity, but Christian compassion, where you so are deeply moved by someone's situation that you just can't pass by. You just can't turn a blind eye to it, but you decide you're going to get involved and you enter their brokenness and you serve them the way that Jesus did for us when we were lying spiritually dead on the side of the road. And when I look at this story, I see that really, for me, there's three truths that I want to sort of wrap this up with today that I want you to get from this story. Jesus gives us these three profound truths of what it means to radically love our neighbors. Here's the first one. Jesus says that true restoration is more than observation. Now, think about that with me just for a second. It's more than just looking, because we're good at this as a church, right? I mean, we can look and we can see a lot of people that are worse off than we are. But true restoration, according to Jesus, is more than just observing. It's more than just looking and seeing folks in difficult situations and saying, I'm going to pray for you. Oh, I want to tell you, on Facebook, I'm going to put that little emoji of my praying hands, and I'm going to put my tear emoji up there, and, oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this thing. Click, I've taken care of them. I've done what I need to do there. It's interesting. Jesus, he says, guys, you can't follow me and then just ignore the plight of the poor. You can't shake your head and say, when you see somebody in need, whew, somebody's got to do something to help that guy. I sure hope the government comes through for them. I sure hope the agency that takes care of them in our community, that nonprofit, man, I hope somebody's calling them. I would just say, if not you and me, then who? I mean, think about the Church of Jesus Christ. We're an oasis of hope. If it's not the Church of Jesus Christ, then really we might ought to think about just closing our doors, because we are not doing the mission that God has called his church to do. And don't miss the twist here. Jesus tells this story and he says the priest and the Levite, these are two church leaders, all right? These guys, they're up front people. And Jesus makes it clear where they're coming from. They're going from Jerusalem. They're walking back to Jericho. Now, where have they been? You know where these guys have been? They've been to church. What's in Jerusalem? The temple is in Jerusalem. They've been from Jericho up to the temple to worship God. And now they're headed back after they've heard the word of God taught. They've been in the temple with other believers, and they completely ignore this guy after they've been to church. They probably had all kinds of excuses, Well, the preacher went over, sermon was too long, he blah, 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 or the line's getting long at Cracker Barrel, and the Methodists are going to beat us over there, and we got to go, we just don't have time. They've done their duty. They went to church on Sunday, they gave their hour, hearing, preaching the word of God, yet they were unchanged. They were blind to the needs of their neighbor on the road. And sometimes we're just like them, aren't we? And it's easy to give them a hard time, but sometimes we just get like them. We step over neighbors on our way home as well, primarily not from a hard heart, and that's not who we are. But most of us are just too busy to actually stop and help to see the needs of our neighbors fulfilled. When we get to a place in our Christian lives where we hear God's word in our head, and yet it never changes our heart, Jesus says we've lost our first love, that we've lost somehow understanding that it's not religion, it's relationship. And when Jesus came into our life, not only did he allow us to be part of his family and seal our security to go to heaven when we die, but he left us here on mission. And today we're his hands and we're his feet. So true restoration is more than just observing and moving on. Second thing Jesus says here is that our neighbors aren't just next door to us. And I want you to get this. Jesus tells this story to help us understand who our neighbors truly are. And sure, it's those folks who live beside us that we actually hopefully know in our neighborhoods if we've been there very long. When Brenda and I moved in our neighborhood, first time we'd ever lived in a subdivision, first time we'd ever had neighbors beside cows. And I was so excited to get to know all of our neighbors. And so, over time, we'd take our dogs and we'd just go walk through the neighborhood. That was a great way to get to know our neighbors. And we know everybody in our neighborhood now. We know if they're Christian or not. And we know their needs. We know so many things about them. And so, obviously, our neighbors are important to us. And I think as Americans, we think neighboring is all about proximity. But you know what Jesus does with that? He sort of, like that old Coyote and Roadrunner, he sort of takes that and just explodes that myth with this story. I mean, he does. He says your neighbors are not those who live only across the street from you or who look like you or who, vote like you, who work in the same places you do, who have the same values you have. In fact, the person who helps the broken man is a Samaritan, this direct enemy again of the Jew. And there was such deep racial hatred between the Jews and Samaritans. In the text, Jesus points out race really doesn't matter to the Samaritan. And if you think about it, in that situation, even if you struggle with that, it wouldn't matter to you either. He doesn't care if the Samaritan is brown or black or white or blue. He could care less. He just sees somebody that is in need, and the Samaritan is the answer to his need. I thought about, when I was reading that story, and I thought, if something happened to me, and I was in a situation where I had to have help, and somebody called 911 and said I was in a traffic accident or something, and the paramedics come, and the ambulance finally gets there, and here I am half dead, bleeding out. I don't care what color that person is when they show up to help me. I want to know one thing. Can you help me? Can you help me? And all those prejudices that so many of us may have had, it really doesn't matter in those times of our life. Jesus says your neighbors aren't always the folks next to you. Rather, they're anyone of any race, any creed, any background who really needs help that Jesus puts in your path. That's your neighbor. Whoever is out there that you come across that needs help, that you're on your way and they are in your path. And we know that these are often divine appointments. The story really would have shocked people when Jesus used the Samaritan as a hero. It really doesn't shock us that much. We can't really understand what Jesus was trying to do. But let me give you a little idea. And again, if this offends you, I apologize. I'm not trying to offend you. But this would be an analogy, something like this story for us today in our culture. It would be like a Baptist Trump Republican is bleeding on the side of the road, and a couple of Methodists or Episcopalians pass by, but they decide not to get involved when a Muslim Biden Democrat pulls up in her Prius and gets out and bandages the Trump guy, takes him down to urgent care, pays the bill because Obamacare won't cover the cost. I mean, this is really, in today's language, how a story like this would go over to the hearers that Jesus is teaching. And it was radical stuff. This is how outlandish this story is in Jesus' day. And Jesus is just trying to get us to see that loving our neighbors has nothing to do with proximity or politics or even religion. Rather, he just wants us to open our eyes to see the needs of people he puts in our path every day. And when we define neighbor in this light, no one is left out. Nobody's left out. Here's the third thing. True love always has a cost, doesn't it? It just does. The last point of the story here for me is the Samaritan crossed the street, picked a man up, put him on his donkey, took him to the inn, paid 2 denarii. That's at least a couple days' wages. It could be up to a week's wage. And he said, hey, I'll be back. And if I owe you more, here's my American Express card. Just put it on there. I'm going to take care of it. You're not out anything. Basically, the Samaritan says he is committed to this guy's long-term restoration. Not just a touch and he's finished, but he actually gets involved with his time and his resources to help. Have you ever thought about Christian love? Christian love has a cost. We don't serve to feel good about ourselves. We serve because we look at the cross and we're so overwhelmed with gratitude over the cost that Jesus himself paid to serve us. The Good Samaritan actually points to the greatest Samaritan. It's Jesus. And Jesus saw us broken on the side of the road, half dead in our sins. And he leaves heaven and he comes and on the cross pays our sin debt, our bill in full. But it cost him his life. We know this. And that's what it looks like, I think, to love your neighbor. That's the reason that when we think about the love that Jesus gave to us, it was a sacrifice. And it means that when we accept his love into our life, that we're willing to sacrifice for people who can never pay us back. We can't ever pay Jesus back for what he's done for us if we know him as Lord and Savior of our life. But you know what we can do? We can pay it forward. And that's what Love Week does. Love Week gives us all a chance to pay forward that when we were bleeding and when we were half dead, that Jesus paid a huge price to cover us, not step over and pass by, but to come into our life and be a part of our long-term restoration. So hey, when you go out and serve during Love Week, it's going to cost you some time, may even cost you a resource or two, but what an opportunity to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. So if you haven't signed up yet, your campus pastors are going to come down. They're going to tell you how to get signed up. Our online pastor will tell you how to get signed up on TV. And if you're watching online, then, hey, we want you to be a part of Love Week as well. And we have lots of opportunities all over Southwest Virginia for you to be a part of loving your community, loving your neighbors in a way that will give God glory and will challenge you. So would you pray with me? Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for this story that we've read probably hundreds of times for those of us that have been followers of you for a long time. But God, just help us put this story in perspective, that we are the hands and feet of Jesus. And we have to do more than just observe people that are discouraged and hope somebody else or the government restores them. No, you've left that mission to the church. And Lord, just help us to know that our neighbors aren't just those who live across the street, but it's anybody you put in our path that has a need that we can help. And Father, we know that when we go out and serve, there is a cost because of the great cost you have given to rescue us. So I just pray right now that you'll help our people to be willing to go out and serve their community and to be the love of Jesus, the hands and feet of Jesus to people who are discouraged and down and out and just struggling. God, you've blessed us so much that one of the things that gets life off of our own selves is to go and help somebody else. And we don't have to look too far down the road to see somebody in worse shape than we are. So we're strugglers, helping strugglers. We sure don't have it all together. We're not saying that by any means, but Lord, deepen our friendship with you and our relationship with you and build friendships with people that we might have least expected through our Love Week. Lord, if there's one here or watching online or on TV that's never trusted in you today, I pray today would be the day that they would receive Jesus Christ into their heart and life. You say, man, how do I do that, Allen? You just simply say, Jesus, I am in need of you. I have made mistakes. I am a sinner. And I ask you to come into my heart. Forgive me of my sin. I repent today and I ask you, God, to save me. I need salvation of Jesus. If you pray a prayer like that, man, we'd love to know about it. Just click that little raised hand button online, or if you're at one of our in-person locations just on your way out today, just grab a staff person or a leader or a volunteer, and we want to rejoice with you in the greatest decision you've ever made. Thank you, Father, for the opportunity to be a neighbor and to share the love of Jesus. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen.